All right, welcome to LinkedIn Lunch Break. My name is Guillermo Bravo. I'm the CEO and founder of Foot Traffic. We're a laser-focused dispensary advertising and marketing agency focused on compliant, scalable digital strategies that are designed to increase foot traffic and boost e-commerce sales. I'd like to welcome Jocelyn Sheltraw. Jocelyn is the Director of Industry Relations at Headset, responsible for internal and external strategies to build Headset's brand awareness, community development, and market expansion across North America. Jocelyn is a vocal cannabis advocate and industry thought leader involved in various cannabis associations, committees, social equity programs, as well as a regular speaker at cannabis industry events, podcasts, and webinars. Thank you for joining us today, Jocelyn.
What's happening? Thank you for having me.
How is all in California?
All is well in California. It's nice and hot today in Oakland. The world is opening today, so at least our little world here. And this is my first LinkedIn Live, so hell yeah.
Boom, check that off the list.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Today we'll be covering how to use dispensary data from Headset to guide your marketing strategy. And I'm just going to ask you a few questions and get your insight into different topics on how to best leverage Headset.
I love it.
So let's kick it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the powerful data tool Headset and what it does for dispensaries.
Cool. Well, for me, I'm super stoked to be talking about this subject because prior to joining the cannabis industry, I've been a part of it for 3 years, actually this month, been with Headset the entire time. And prior to this, I spent my career working in the ad tech industry. So it's really fun for my worlds to kind of be colliding now. But I spent, 10, 12 years working with app developers really around the year the iPhone came out and was building apps, was doing all the advertising and monetization for apps. So a lot of apps that many of us love to use today, like Spotify and SoundCloud, Uber, et cetera. And so I've been waiting for the cannabis industry to kind of mature and start adopting a lot of the same thought processes and methodologies from ad tech. And so starting to happen. Companies like Foot Traffic are kind of paving the way here. But what we do at Headset is we are a cannabis data and analytics software company. And I really want to stress the word software because that's really what we're providing to different parts of the industry. And so for a fun, quick little background on Headset, we were started by the founders of Leafly, and a lot of longtime cannabis people are aware of this. But for me, coming from the app space, that's originally what attracted me to the company, given that our founders have this long history in the space. But anyway, so what we do is we're providing a couple different softwares to one for a retailer, and that's what we're talking about today. So I'm going to focus specifically on this, but I think it's really interesting for people to understand the full breadth of what we do at Headset. So the first thing that we're doing is we're providing this software that we call Retailer. And what this does is it pulls in all the dispensaries' point of sale data, and it's turning that point of sale data into these actionable visualizations and reports that they're really using to understand their inventory and to understand who their customer is and what their customers like to purchase. And then the kind of next big thing that we do that we're more commonly known for in the media is around our real-time market data. So what we're doing on the back end is we're aggregating all of that point of sale data from our 1,800 plus dispensary partners across North America. And we're running a bunch of different forecast methodologies to forecast that data up for the entire state or the province. So that as an industry, let's say, I'm in California, so it's really important that we understand, well, what percentage of our sales are going to flower versus vape? Who are those brands within each of those categories? What do they charge for their products? And detailed market data. So you can think of us as the retail business analytics for what's happening in their own store and who their customer is, but then also just general market data for what's going on in the industry as a whole.
Well, it sounds like it is a powerful tool. We use it all the time, and those industry insights are powerful. You can help, tailor your marketing campaigns and also purchasing. Like, are you missing inventory that your competitors are offering? Checking out price points, and I mean, a wide set of data points that you can leverage for just scaling your business. So thank you for sharing that. Can you give us some insight into why it's so crucial for dispensaries to gather data and pay attention to market trends?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time answering this question, and oftentimes the way I'll answer it is like, okay, this is new for like cannabis retailers should be doing something different than a traditional retailer. But cannabis retail is just like traditional retail, right? So as a retailer, it doesn't matter what industry you're a part of. Essentially, what retailers are needing to know is they need to know how much product should they be ordering? What types of products should they be ordering? A lot of this is really new for the cannabis industry because, I'll use the example, I'm based in California. We've been a medical market since 1996. Technology has been emerging over the past, 6 years in particular, especially since we've gotten, adult use. And so now we're starting to see the industry mature and it's operating much more comparatively to traditional retail industries. So as a cannabis retailer, this is a lot harder, right, than traditional retail industries because you don't have as much capital, you're taxed at a much higher rate, and your margins are often a lot lower. And so what the retailers really care about right now is, okay, what kinds of products should I be ordering? What assortment of flower versus vape cartridges versus edibles should I have in my store? Who are those brands that I should be carrying? How should I price that information or those products? A lot of this has been run off of gut instinct, right? Because prior to having technology to help us, the retailers would just go around to the stores in their area and they'd see, okay, well, what is this? What's my competitor carrying? How are they pricing their products? Well, we don't have to do that anymore. And so what we're doing is, we're really helping retailers understand what that inventory or product assortment should be. And then as of, recently, we're seeing the emergence of different customer CRM solutions. So we're seeing things, actually today is a really exciting day for our team because we just announced this partnership with Spring Big. And so this is kind of the new emergence of where the cannabis retail industry is going. It's understanding who your customer is, right? There's becoming a lot more competition within the retailers and there's more licensing being offered. So now retailers are wanting to understand, well, who is my customer? What do they like to purchase? Are they finding me from Leafly or Weed Maps? Well, are they just a walk-in? So they need to understand more about their customers so that they can then shift that whole product assortment strategy and their marketing strategy.
Yeah, and how can dispensaries use Headset in their marketing efforts?
So I'm going to speak to, so I just mentioned like we're super stoked about this new partnership with Spring Big. So I'm going to use this as an example for a moment. Okay. So, and I think this is great for you guys as well, just being that you're doing, a lot of the location-based marketing campaigns. So, okay, so today the dispensary is wanting to understand where their customers finding them. A big way that dispensaries are marketing is through text messages, right? This is one of the most common tactics because as an industry, we don't have a lot of options yet because we can't do the same kind of marketing that a traditional CPG company or retailer would do. So for us, text messaging as an industry is incredibly important. It's one of the, most probably impactful ways that dispensaries are creating loyalty and customer acquisition. And so what you can do through Headset's retail software is, number one, you're pulling in all your customer data. So we can see, okay, how many people are within a certain demographic group? Of that group, how many times are those people coming into my store? So we classify these in what we call an Rfm segmentation. And what this is doing is it's bucketing your customers by the frequency and the monetization, so how much they're spending at your store. So when we can see a group of people, so you can see by their mobile ID, by their mobile phone number, their name, who they are, you can see, all right, this group of customers, these are my loyalists. These are the customers that are coming into my store frequently. I want to reward these customers. So I want to send them a more targeted text message and give them a special promotion or offer. This all sounds very basic, right? Especially for a lot of people who've been doing, marketing campaigns in traditional industries, but this is all very new for the cannabis industry. And so being able to, number one, bucket those customers and just understand who they are and what products they like to purchase but then being able to directly send them a message that's most relevant to them. This is going to save a retailer a lot of money and messages that just aren't necessary on people who maybe are just an out of town tourist or whatever it may be. So we want to be really conscious of our money in this industry, because a lot of companies just don't have a lot of it. So being very aware of where you're spending money is critical at this point.
I agree. And, I always, recommend the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the revenue is probably coming from 20% of your customers. So what can you do to encourage them to come in more frequently to buy, to spend more per visit, and, be loyal to your brand instead of losing maybe a sale here and there to one of your competitors. So just really tailoring your message to be more relevant to the customer. And, the end goal is really just increasing the average lifetime value of the customer, right? So any way that we can, give people what they want, really, it's just make it simple, talk to them, where they are, whether it's they're a flower customer, or they're experimenting with vape cartridges, or they're all about 710 and celebrating here in a couple weeks. So it varies, and it's great to see a lot of the traditional segmentation and RFM segmentation that you mentioned. So it's fantastic. We do the same thing, kind of leveraging the different customer segments when we're running like display ad campaigns, and we'll same thing that you suggested as example, pull out customers that purchase flower, and then boom, we'll follow them around with ads showing different flower ads, kind of as they're browsing on Zillow or CNN or whatever, and then coming back to just staying top of mind and keeping that brand in their mobile apps or whatever they're doing on their cell phone, and just ensuring that the awareness is there, and that when they are looking to purchase cannabis, that boom, they'll think of the dispensary and retail brand. So it's fantastic. What are 2 to 3 data points that you see dispensaries miss the mark on when applying their data learning for their marketing strategies?
So, it's hard to give 2 to 3 on an average, and only because, here's the honest truth of what I find over my last 3 years in the industry. And just for a little greater context, so I am based in California, but I'm working with markets throughout the US and Canada. And so I do find that there are differences in how each market operates, because every market has a different licensing structure. Each market has a different culture, right? And this is often something that is underestimated from people until you've been in the industry for a while and understand kind of how it operates. And so when I was thinking about this question, like, what are these 2 to 3 data points? It doesn't matter the market, because we're kind of so early in this industry. And on average, I'll say this is still a learning curve of how to incorporate data, how to incorporate technology, how to read all of your disparate data services. There's a lot of different technologies or companies that a retailer has to use to really make sense of all their data, right? They're using an ERP solution. They're using a point of sale solution. They're using an analytics solution like Headset. They're using a messaging platform like Springbig. Well, you're going to get different data sets. You're going to get different pieces of information along the way from all of those solutions. And so when I'm asked this question, well, what are the 2 to 3 data points? It's really coming down to having a holistic and integrated kind of understanding of the data across all of these platforms. And what that will come back to, the 2 to 3 things that you want to be looking at, it's really about inventory and understanding who your customer is. And that can mean a bevy of different things. But to make this more specific, on the inventory side, quite frankly, I see a lot of, this is a basic example. I see a lot of things like, hey, we were missing, like, I had no idea that we had 200 vape carts in somewhere here in our store, but I see it listed within our point of sale. I see it listed in with Headset that there's 200 units of this particular vape cartridge. And a lot of times what happens is that there's a lot of boxes in your back room. There's a lot of kind of things that aren't really organized. And so there'll be a missing box in the back room of 200 vape cartridges that are about to expire. So I'm using that as an example of a lot of this is about like efficiency and just making sure you know where your inventory is, or that you know how much to order. A lot of dispensaries are just kind of saying like, hey, I'm going to order some patches. I want to order some patches and I'm just going to place an order of this much, but there's not really, it's not based off of any kind of historical data of what the sell-through has traditionally been. And so we're out trying to educate retailers like, hey, you can make inventory-based decisions on your historical data of what's been sold through, coming from your point of sale system and in through Headset. You don't have to make these blind decisions with how much product to order. And then the same thing on the customer side, right? Like we don't have to make blind decisions about knowing who your customer is. You can serve every little metro is a little bit different, right? I live in Oakland. We have different consumer trends than you're going to see in San Francisco. So you also don't have to make those blind decisions of knowing who your customer is. But again, because this is just so new for us as an industry, retailers are often just trying to survive at this point, and there's often not a resource internally that's really using all of the data. So again, just to kind of close it out, the 2 to 3 ways people can be using data or where they're missing the mark. Honestly, at this point, it's just using data to make inventory and customer marketing decisions.
No, that's major, and I've seen this a lot. Working up where Leafly was founded up in Seattle, and how sell-through is so important because you have a limited amount of space in the dispensary, and you really want product in and out in 30 days. So you don't want to over order. You don't want to order products that are not in demand. And if you have these market trends, then boom, there's your answer. You get to use historical data. Customers want this. Your competitors are selling it. So therefore, you should probably add this to your catalog. And on the second part of that is messaging the right customer. So you have cartridges in, all right, of my 20,000 customers, 1,000 of them smoke, vapes. I can get this messaging out to that audience, and you tailor your inventory to your marketing, and that's going to allow you to scale your revenue and keep your customers happy by giving them the products they want. So that's fantastic.
Well, and if I could just add on something, because you mentioned something so important that we talk a lot about at Headset, which is the 80-20 rule. And I'm super passionate about this rule because it's actually something that's applicable to all of us in our everyday lives, whether it's cannabis related or not. And just as a quick little history course or kind of an understanding for people of what the 80-20 rule is. This really came about from in the early 1900s, I think around 1930, by this Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. And he had this theory that 80% of the wealth in Italy was owned by 20% of people. And this theory developed over time. Other economists, other psychologists looked at this theory, and actually we found this is something that's applicable across every industry. So in general, what this rule is saying is that 20% of your outputs are going to be the result of, or it's going to result in 80% of your inputs. So meaning in the cannabis industry, 20% of your products are probably going to make up 80% of your sales. 20% of your staff is probably going to make up 80% of your sales. And so at Headset, we wanted to look at this because, of course, we're curious. And so we actually did analysis on this in a webinar a couple of weeks ago, where we looked across several of the states and provinces. And we found this to be, in general, pretty true. 80-20 is just like a steadfast kind of rule, like 30-70, it's still kind of the same theory of that, your output versus input. But we found that some states, like in Washington, for example, you use this as an example. Washington, the amount of products that a retailer has on their shelves in Washington, it's more than any other state we see. It's a lot. And it makes a lot of sense when you look at the fact that Washington doesn't require distribution, right? Like we do in California. So this takes out a layer of that supply chain that makes it a lot easier as a brand to sell into the retailer. So it makes sense that you're going to see more product distribution there. But what happens there is that we did this analysis a couple of weeks ago, and we found that the bottom 20% of products had, or it was about 20% of products had zero sales over a 90-day period. Wow. And so when we're looking at how much stale inventory is on a retailer's shelf, it's significant in a market like Washington, where in fact, the average retailer in Washington, this was an analysis from a year ago, there's more product SKUs on a shelf than in a Trader Joe's. So wow. If we think about how hard that is for an inventory manager or a marketing manager to look at all of those different product SKUs and be able to keep track of all that inventory, be able to understand what inventory is selling well, that is a really hard job for someone to do.
Exactly.
And often what we know is that too many choices, people are less satisfied with what they purchase and they end up purchasing less. And so the point of the 80-20 rule, we often don't need as much as we think we do. And that's something I think retailers need to think about in cannabis.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I didn't know that the SKUs are so much in Washington, but it's impressive that it's more than Trader Joe's. But my personal belief is, follow the kind of Apple or Google methodology is like less is more. Just give people what they want, keep the store clean, keep the product offering really focused on what customers want. And I mean, as you suggested, 20%, the bottom 20% of products are not being sold. And once you sell those out, you probably should never order those again. It's just keep it lean and really relevant. Wonderful.
Yeah.
What is an exciting market trend that West Coast dispensaries should pay attention to? And the same goes for East Coast.
So it's okay. So it's hard to answer this because it's not an apples to apples comparison. We get asked this a lot on the East Coast versus West Coast because there are major differences. But the way I would suggest that people think about this is that you first have to understand how that state operates from a licensing structure. Exactly. And I'll give you an example of why, because so California, we're a state of 40 plus million people, and we've got 750-ish open and operating storefronts. We've got another 300 retail or delivery licenses. And then you go up to Oregon, a state of 4 million people. They have the same amount of licenses that we do in California. Then you go over to the East Coast because these are newer markets. They're just coming online. Many cities are still opting into building out cannabis retail footprint, kind of where they're going to offer those licenses. All of that's so new that they don't have as many licenses at this point. And the other difference that I see on the East Coast is that they're having a lot of people from more traditional industries that are coming into the cannabis industry. So there's a lot of people from traditional CPG and retail that for them, this is already a skill set that's existing. But when you think about the West Coast markets, these states have had medical programs for decade plus longer. And so it's just a very different mindset of the person that's working in this industry. And so when it's like, what are the things that they should be learning from each other? It's recognizing the nuances of each of the markets and the people working within them, how those programs are operating. And then I think we're going to all come to the same place of, okay, data, technology, these things are par for the course in any other mature industry. That's how it's going to operate here. There's no differences in how a retail business should be run on the East Coast versus here. We're just at different life cycles or different stages in our markets is all.
I've noticed the same thing. It's been a very diverse set of just marketing managers, CMOs, dispensary owners running campaigns on the West Coast versus the East Coast. We bring in a lot of the evergreen or kind of old school marketing tactics that we use from 1996 all the way up until now. I know there's different discount regulations. There's different distribution, vertical integration.
A lot of the MSOs, like if you look at California, we're not a heavily MSO run state, whereas then you go over to the East Coast and that's all of the MSOs are really on the East Coast. Yeah. So This is that's going to be a huge difference in how they're going to run their retail operation, because they're managing 15, 20 different stores. They've got to make sure they're having very integrated solutions. Whereas if you're just running a single store shop in California or in Oregon, this is very different mindset and kind of business need that you have.
I mean, even within the East Coast, like looking at New York versus Philadelphia versus Boston, like the markets are completely different when we're running advertising campaigns. And the way that we're approaching campaigns, like whether it's adult use or medical, is another factor. Age demographic, proximity to city center is another factor. So there's all these different factors that come into play that, like, there really is no cookie cutter approach to this. You have to look at the data. You need to look at your inventory trends. You need to look at what your customers want, and you need to deliver that to them, in their phone, right? So it's like everyone's shopping online, they're doing curbside pickup, delivery, and just speak to them where they are, and that's going to be on their phone and digitally. So, COVID really kind of expedited the whole process of delivery, and a lot of these states did lift their restrictions on delivery and kind of opened it up to be more available to customers and patients. So it's been a wild year and a half since COVID COVID began, and we're seeing the end of it now, and we're going to see a difference in trends in Q3. Since everything's opening up in California, how is that going to change? Customer demand.
And it's not even just the pandemic, right? It's like, look at a lot of these markets where we've had fires. Like, we're preparing to go into a very intense fire season. So we saw some product shortages because of that. Then look at the riots or a lot of the break-ins. Like, I live in Oakland. There was, in this area, I think it was reported 50 stores that were broken into. Nug, one of the big cultivators and product manufacturers out here, were robbed of, I heard $6 million. So that creates,
it devastated.
So a lot of these things that are happening, it's not, this industry is never, it's actually, it's makes it hard for us as a data company when we're trying to say, hey, like, look at what happened last year, and we can make some assumptions on how this next year. We can't do that for this last year because we've had these like multiple different crises on the West Coast. So
it's keeping us on our toes, that's for sure. Well, thank you, Jocelyn, for joining me today and sharing your insights with our audience. And where can our audience find more information about Headset and follow you on social? Like, what are your profiles?
I mean, you can follow us on Headset anywhere you look up headset.io. And so we post a ton of stuff. We share a lot on LinkedIn. I personally share a lot on LinkedIn, all types of trends that we're learning across the country, different product announcements. So you can follow me there. Also doing a lot of the world is opening up. So a lot more cannabis meetups. We're going to kick off. We're doing this thing called Data Nights, where every quarter we're presenting some analysis to the market, and we travel around the country, and we're just kind of getting the community together, talking about what we're learning. So we're going to kick those off, but you can follow me on Instagram, Jossie Bossy, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll be sharing kind of everything that where we're going to be and what we're learning along the way.
Wonderful. Would love to join you on one of those data insight panels and just kind of go through and dive in deep into the data. We're definitely love diving into the data and just finding different things out in the emerging markets. Well, thank you again, Jocelyn. And just a reminder, everyone, for this Thursday, we will be hosting a webinar on how to do SEO for MSOs. So hop on over to foottraffic.co, click on webinars to sign up, and you can join on our upcoming webinar. And thank you once again, Jocelyn. I hope all is well in California, and looking forward to being out there and experiencing a new open California.
Yeah,
it's right on. Nice. Enjoy the weather out there.
Cool.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.